know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gale Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This talk presents my revisionist history of Billy Bonney's Coroner's jury report. The information is from my book, The Coroner's Jury Report of Billy the Kid, the inquest that sealed the fame of Billy Bonney and Pat Garrett. Arguably, the most famous Old West killing was of Billy Bonney by Pat Garrett on July 14th, 1881, in the Maxwell family's Fort Sumner mansion. The next day, July 15th, there was an inquest yielding the 6 jurymen's coroner's jury report. It identified the victim as William Bonney, had a witness statement by Peter Maxwell, and called the shooting by Garrett justifiable homicide. Billy Bonney's killing occurred right after New Mexico Territory's 1870s decade of bloody grassroots uprisings against the lethal, land-grabbing, political-economic cabal of the Santa Fe Ring. In the most famous rebellion, the 1878 Lincoln County War, teenage Billy became the people's hero, ending up outlawed by the Ring as Billy the Kid. The Ring's attempt to eliminate him by hanging for that war's regulator killings failed with his escape on April 28, 1881, from Sheriff Pat Garrett's custody in Lincoln County's courthouse jail. So Garrett was just completing his killing task 78 days later. Billy's coroner's jury report was filed with the correct authority to validate it. He was the district attorney of the 1st Judicial District, which included Fort Sumner's San Miguel County. And because Pat Garrett additionally claimed the Billy the Kid reward, that report ended up validated by the territory's other high public officials for its granting. As will be seen in later talks, that coroner's jury report was the bugaboo of 20th century old-timer Billy the Kid imposters and their huckster promoters who lied that Billy survived Pat Garrett's shooting. Of necessity, they also lied that the report didn't exist, so the body wasn't identified. Or they lied that Garrett wrote the report to hide that he killed an innocent victim, not Billy. Or they lied that jury president Milner Rudolph wasn't present, so the report was faked. Billy's coroner's jury report of July 15, 1881, is a 3-page document written by Justice of the Peace Alejandro Segura in that day's legal Spanish. He forwarded it to the proper district attorney, William Breeden. It began, "To the District Attorney of the 1st Judicial District of the Territory of New Mexico, greetings." Segura, as ex officio coroner by virtue of being Justice of the Peace, chose the jurymen. He wrote, "Immediately upon receiving said information of a murder, I proceeded to the said place and named Milner Rudolph, Jose Silva, Antonio Saavedra, Pedro Antonio Lucera, Lorenzo Jaramillo, and Sabal Gutierrez, a jury to investigate the case. Segura confirmed identification of the body and its fatal wound. He wrote, "The jurymen found the body of William Bonney, alias Kid, with a shot in the left breast." Segura provided Peter Maxwell's eyewitness account, stating, "Pat F. Garrett fired 2 shots at the said William Bonney, and the said William Bonney fell near my fireplace, and I went out of the room, and when I came in again about 3 or 4 minutes after the shots, the said William Bonney was dead." Segura gave the juryman's verdict. He wrote, "The deed of said Garrett was justifiable homicide." Segura gave the juryman's recommendation. He is worthy of being rewarded. On screen is the 3-page Spanish coroner's jury report of July 15, 1881, for William H. Bonney in precinct number 27 in the county of San Miguel. Translated, it stated, "To the District Attorney of the First Judicial District of the Territory of New Mexico, greetings. On this 15th day of July, A.D. 1881, I, the undersigned Justice of the Peace of the above-named precinct, received information that a murder had taken place in Fort Sumner in said precinct, and immediately upon receiving said information, I proceeded to the said place and named Milner Rudolph, Jose Silva, Antonio Saavedra, Pedro Antonio Lucera, Lorenzo Jaramillo, and Sabal Gutierrez, a jury to investigate the case, and the above jury convened in the home of Luz B. Maxwell and proceeded to a room in the said house where they found the body of William Bonney, alias Kid, with a shot in the left breast. And having examined the body, they examined the evidence of Pedro Maxwell, which evidence is as follows. I, being in my bed in my room at about midnight on the 14th day of July, Pat F. Garrett came into my room and sat on the end of my bed to talk with me. A little while after Garrett sat down, William Bonney came in and got close to my bed with a gun in his hand and asked me, "Who is it? Who is it?" And then Pat F. Garrett fired 2 shots at the said William Bonney, and the said Bonney fell near my fireplace, and I went out of the room, and when I came in again, about 3 or 4 minutes after the shots, the said Bonney was dead. The jury has found the following verdict. We, the jury, unanimously find that William Bonney has been killed by a bullet in the left breast in the region of the heart, the same having been fired from a pistol in the hand of Pat F. Garrett, and our verdict is that the act of said Garrett was justifiable homicide, and we are unanimous in the opinion that the gratitude of all the community is due to the said Garrett for his deed, and he is worthy of being rewarded. The jurymen signed as M. Rudolph, President, Antonio Saavedra, Pedro Antonio Lucera, Jose Silva, signed with an X, Sabal Gutierrez, signed with an X, and Lorenzo Jaramillo, signed with an X. All which information I put at your disposal, signed Alejandro Segura, Justice of the Peace. The brushy Bill Roberts, Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax, fabricated that jury president Milner Rudolph was not present, so the report was fake. But Rudolph's signature on the report, with its unique Spencerian penmanship flourishes, matches Rudolph's signature on his May 18, 1879 letter to Territorial Secretary William G. Rich, proving his presence. On screen is Milner Rudolph's signature on the July 15, 1881 coroner's jury report and his matching signature on his May 18, 1879 letter to Territorial Secretary William G. Rich, proving his presence at the inquest by his signing the report. Milner Rudolph's presence explains the jurymen's conclusion, which was unexpected given their friendship with Billy. The report stated, "We are unanimous in the opinion that the gratitude of all the community is due to the said Garrett for his deed, and he is worthy of being rewarded." Rudolph was postmaster of Sunnyside, 7 miles north of Fort Sumner. A loyal Ringite, he'd helped boss Thomas Benton Catron and his Santa Fe Ring take over the legislature in 1872 to block anti-ring bills. That caused the first anti-ring freedom fight, which I named the Legislature Revolt. Ringite Governor Marsh Giddings used troops to suppress the anti-ring legislators and cancel their bills. Rudolph's threatening presence apparently influenced Alejandro Segura's writing of the report. His frightened jurymen had no alternative but to sign the conclusion the day after ring terrorism had invaded their town. Another ploy of the Brushy Bill hoax was claiming the coroner's jury report signers didn't exist or weren't local men. But the census for 1880, the year before they signed, shows all being in San Miguel County. Another ploy of the Brushy Bill hoax was claiming that Pat Garrett wrote the report, but Justice of the Peace Alejandro Segura identified himself as the author, writing it in the first person, as translated, "On this 15th day of July 1881, I, the undersigned Justice of the Peace, proceeded to the said place and named the jurymen." He concluded for the district attorney recipient, "All which information I put at your disposal." He signed as Alejandro Segura, Justice of the Peace. Additionally, Segura wrote the report with script idiosyncrasies compatible with a native-speaking writer like him and unknown to Pat Garrett. Furthermore, the name Pat F. Garrett, as written in the report, doesn't match how Garrett wrote his name. If he wrote the report, his own name would match his handwriting. On screen is the Pat Garrett name as written in the coroner's jury report. It's followed by his actual non-matching signature on his December 13, 1901 letter to his wife. Another ploy of the Brushy Bill hoax was claiming the report didn't exist because it wasn't in Alejandro Segura's files. But it wasn't supposed to be there. Segura complied with the territory's general laws of New Mexico under the Act of January 30, 1867, Article 15, Chapter 40, Constables, Coroners, and Inquests. It stated, "The verdict of the jury shall be in writing, which shall be signed by the Justice of the Peace and each one of the jury, and so recorded in the office of the probate judge of the county in which the inquest was held." Close quote. But probate judge filing didn't apply to Billy, who had no estate or assets. So Segura sent the report of this high-profile killing to, quote, "the district attorney of the First Judicial District. As prosecutor, this official could vouch for the verdict of justifiable homicide of the identified victim, Billy Bonney." That July 15, 1881, Pat Garrett sent a letter with enclosed copy of that coroner's jury report to the territory's acting governor, William Rich, to claim past Governor Lew Wallace's Billy the Kid reward. The actual governor, Lionel Sheldon, was on leave from the territory. Garrett confirmed his killing of Billy and its self-defense nature. It was quoted in July 23, 1881's Las Cruces Rio Grande Republican in "Kid the Killer Killed." William Bonney, alias Antrim, alias Billy the Kid, fatally meets Pat Garrett, the Lincoln County Sheriff. It stated, Below is given Sheriff Garrett's report as made to Acting Governor Rich, which contains also the verdict of the coroner's jury, explained as its translation. The excerpted article stated, William Bonney, alias the Kid, is dead. No report could have caused more general feeling of gratification than this. The following is Sheriff Garrett's official report to the Chief Executive of the Territory. To His Excellency, the Governor of New Mexico, I have the honor to inform Your Excellency that I had received several communications from persons in and about Fort Sumner that William Bonney, alias the Kid, had been there. In view of those reports, I determined it my duty to go there, all the time doubting their accuracy, but on Monday, July 11, I left home taking with me John W. Poe and T.L. McKinney and arrived just below Fort Sumner on Wednesday, 13th. Note that it was Thursday, the 14th. I entered the fort about midnight and went to Mr. P. Maxwell's room. I found him in bed and had just commenced talking to him about the object of my visit when a man entered the room in stocking feet with a pistol in one hand and a knife in the other. He came and placed his hand on the bed just beside me, and in a low whisper, "Who is it?" he asked Mr. Maxwell. I knew he was the Kid and reached behind me for my pistol, feeling almost certain of receiving a ball from his, as I felt sure he had now recognized me. But fortunately he drew back from the bed, and although he had his pistol pointed at my breast, he delayed to fire and asked me in Spanish, "¿Quién es? ¿Quién es?" This gave me time to bring mine to bear on him, and the moment I did so, I pulled the trigger, and he received his death wound. It was my desire to have been able to take him alive, but his coming upon me so suddenly and unexpectedly leads me to believe that he had seen me enter the room or had been informed by someone of the fact, and that he came there armed with pistol and knife expressly to kill me if he could. Under that impression, I had no alternative but to kill him or to suffer death at his hands. I herewith annex a copy of the verdict rendered by the jury called by the Justice of the Peace ex officio coroner, the original of which is in the hands of the prosecuting attorney of the First Judicial District. The article translated the report stating that William Bonney was fatally shot by Pat Garrett in justifiable homicide, and he deserved to be rewarded. It named the signers. This July 15th letter to Acting Governor Rich confirmed that the original coroner's jury report went to the district attorney for the First Judicial District, which included San Miguel County, killing site of Fort Sumner. Garrett stated, I herewith annex a copy of the verdict rendered by the jury called in by the Justice of the Peace, the original of which is in the hands of the prosecuting attorney of the First Judicial District. That meant recipient District Attorney William Breeden checked the justifiable homicide verdict. His filing no murder charge against Garrett confirmed he agreed with self-defense, and Acting Governor Rich showed agreement by facilitating Garrett's reward payment. It's important to note that William Breeden was a major Santa Fe ringite. He would have been pleased at the death of the territory's last regulator. Politically powerful, he had aided the ring's 1866 founding by its bosses, Thomas Benton Catron and Stephen Benton Elkins. In 1874, Breeden was made Attorney General by ringite Governor Marsh Giddings. That automatically made him District Attorney for the First Judicial District under the 1863 Territorial Statute. In 1876 and 1878, Breeden was reappointed by ringite Governor S.B. Axtell. In 1875, Breeden was elected to the legislature's council from Santa Fe County and re-elected in 1878. From 1878 to 1880, Henry Waldo, Breeden's ringite law partner and Boss Catron's past law firm member, was Attorney General. In 1881, Breeden was reappointed as Attorney General by Ringite Governor Lionel Sheldon, Lew Wallace's replacement. That also made Breeden District Attorney for the 1st Judicial District of Santa Fe, which included San Miguel County's Fort Sumner, which made him the correct recipient of Billy's coroner's jury report. He served until 1889. He was also president of the New Mexican Printing and Publishing Company, which published the Ringite newspaper, the Santa Fe New Mexican. So Breeden's backing the coroner's jury report represented its ring approval. An additional consideration is that a 21st century Billy the Kid imposter hoax, which will be exposed in later talks, besides lying that the coroner's jury report didn't exist, lied that a real murder case could be filed in 2003 against dead Pat Garrett for murdering an innocent victim instead of Billy Bonney. But the coroner's jury report dated the killing to July 14, 1881. There was a 10-year statute of limitations on murder established in the 1876 Acts of the Legislative Assembly of the Territory of New Mexico. So the last year that Garrett could have been prosecuted for murder in that case was 1891. The original coroner's jury report can be traced from its July 15, 1881 recipient, District Attorney William Breeden, to its chance finding in 1932 by a government employee named Harold Abbott. Abbott was employed in Santa Fe at the State Land Office from 1931 to 1933. He found the report with San Miguel County Court records in the state capitol's basement. He made copies and included his brother George. Harold died in 1937. So George Abbott made the front page of November 30th, 1950's Alamogordo News in Sumner jury thought the kid had been killed. The article debunked the Brushy Bill Roberts imposter hoax then in the news. It stated, although the perennial controversy over whether the infamous Billy the Kid still lives, George Abbott of Alamogordo has in his office at the Pioneer Abstract Company a photostatic copy of the verdict of the coroner's jury, which viewed the remains of the late William Bonney. Some 20 years ago, when the late Harold Abbott, brother of George, was an employee of the State Land Office in Santa Fe, he with other employees were going over some old records in the basement of the state capitol. There they ran across in the San Miguel Court records the original copy of the coroner's jury dated July 15, 1881, and written in Spanish. The document covered 3 pages, of which they made photostatic copies. The 6 men serving on the jury and the justice of the peace who impaneled them seemed convinced that William Bonney, known as the Kid, was quite dead and that he had been killed by Pat Garrett. Close quote. A translation of the report was provided. George Abbott's coroner's jury report copy also appeared in February 1951's New Mexico Magazine under Glimpses of History to rebut the Brushy Bill hoax. The reporter wrote, interest in Billy the Kid, New Mexico's most notorious outlaw, was revived a few weeks ago when an old-timer appeared to claim the identity of the Kid with an assertion that a coroner's inquest report was not legally on file. However, a photostatic copy of the report has been located by New Mexico Magazine in Alamogordo. The photostat is owned by George Abbott, who said his brother had the copy made about 20 years ago. It was partly reproduced for the article. On August 5, 1951, Billy the Kid historian Maurice Garland Fulton, responding to the Brushy Bill hoax, relocated the report. He published an article In the El Paso Times, titled "Coroner's Report Proves Billy the Kid is Dead," historian asserts. Researcher discovers document. The article had Fulton's photostatic copy of the report. It stated, "Billy the Kid is dead. The famed outlaw met death at the business end of Pat Garrett's flaming pistol on July of 1881. So says Colonel Maurice G. Fulton, former custodian of the Lincoln County Museum. Colonel Fulton said, "We are lucky to have a report in this instance, for coroner's jury reports are hard to find." End quote. Fulton had donated a copy to the Indiana Historical Society, stamped with legal certification of authenticity, on January 18, 1951. That's the report I showed earlier in this talk. One can trace the coroner's jury report's storage in the state's successive Capitol buildings. First was William Breeden's Palace of the Governor's Office. He apparently stored it in his capacity as district attorney for the 1st Judicial District under San Miguel County Court records, since this Fort Sumner killing was in that county. On screen is Attorney General William Breeden's office space in Santa Fe's Palace of the Governor's Capitol building, shown as rooms 5, 6, and 8. Breeden used that office until 1889. It was then used by the State Land Office. Apparently, they stored their records with Breeden's. The records were moved with relocations of the Capitol building. In 1932, as Harold Abbott stated, he, with other State Land Office employees, were searching old records in the basement of the Capitol building. His finding of Breeden's San Miguel court records with them indicates that they'd stayed together with the Land Office ones since their Palace of the Governor's storage. There were several subsequent Capitol buildings. From 1850 to 1886, one was under construction but ended up as the Territorial Courthouse. In 1886, another building became the Capitol but burned down on May 12, 1892, though its archives were saved. Then the Territorial Courthouse became the temporary Capitol building until another was completed in 1900. It was used for 66 years until today's Capitol building, the Roundhouse, was dedicated in 1966. So, by Harold Abbott's 1932 finding of the coroner's jury report in his day's Capitol building's basement, the old Palace of the Governor's records might have been moved multiple times. Demonstrated is that government personnel had done a good job of preserving old records. The coroner's jury report of Billy the Kid proves their achievement. A later talk will discuss additional witnesses who identified the body of Billy Bond.